his anxiety about health specifically, I wanted to know.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to be pretty average. Didn't have a lot of anxiety about health specifically.
Right.
I wanted to know how stubborn he was.
Mm-hmm.
That was average as well, not anything real characteristic. Sensitivity to being contradicted seemed to be fairly average.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him if his mood was better from being in like a gliding kind of emotion, like
Mm-hmm.
a rocking chair, or he said it was to some degree. He does not have a history of rectal or anal fissures, which is something I wanted to know. Or he does have he's had hemorrhoids, but they're not painful. And those were the only other questions I had. So that's the few other bits of information that you guys didn't have. That didn't really change my prescription choice. Those questions.
Did he mention having discomfort about clothing being tied around his neck?
Let's see. Yes. It was significant. I rated that as a 2.
And the other thing
Then he had a fear of public speaking.
That's a number one fear of adult.
Yeah, not an uncommon
Yeah,
fear.
sure, that's very common.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought was unusual, even though he had the T&J stuff, but that he
Mhm.
didn't have any cavities.
Mm-hmm. Which those two things don't
Those
necessarily
things
go
are-
hand in hand.
I just thought that was so
Sometimes
unusual.
you might chip away at your teeth or something, but not necessarily cavities from the grinding.
No, not so much from the T&J,
Mhm.
because I know you said he had dental issues, and
Right.
we were speaking more about that, but
Yeah.
just as a human.
Oh, that he had no cavities.
Right,
Right.
he had no cavities
Right.
at his stage in life.
And that's a good way to differentiate between some remedies. Some remedies are notoriously tend to have a lot of caries,
Mhm.
cavities, and others don't. So it's a good thing to note. The other thing I noted was his sensitivity to noise and to perfume.
Mm-hmm.
He's impatient. He had cracks on his heels and his lips, and they were pretty significant. And what else?
The sensitivity to, he said he likes hot weather, but if he was to sit in to have, have a cafe or something, he would rather sit in the shade.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Right.
It's sensitive to light and heat,
Mm-hmm.
and the way he likes to sleep with he likes his window open on the spruce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's sensitive to the heat and to light of the sun. Needs sunglasses. He's okay. He says he prefers it to be 80, 85. He's okay up to the 90s, which is pretty warm. And he's okay down to 30. And he likes fans and windows open.
Mm-hmm.
These are all important things to consider. Perspires easily, especially on the forehead. Drools once or twice a week.
He sleeps on his stomach
Yeah.
too, right?
And he prefers to sleep on his stomach, which is you always want to be careful with that one too. You want to find out if it is it because of pain, is it because of just habit. If it's just for no particular reason, then it's a useful symptom.
Okay.
I see.
If they injured their left shoulder
Right.
from a car accident, and then so they don't like to sleep on it because of that, then you don't really want to use that as a symptom.
Okay.
But yeah, he just for no reason other than just instinctive, he likes to sleep on his stomach, so that's a good symptom. It's probably never a guiding symptom, but it's a good differentiating symptom. Anything else that you guys remember? Okay, so what I did is map this out
Oh, wow.
on the computer. So just a laundry list of the most characteristic, all of what I would consider to be the characteristic symptoms. So the first symptom, and this is how the repertory organizes the symptoms. So mind, cursing, swearing, curses, desire to curse. So basically it's from the section of mind, it's cursing or swearing or cursing, and it's the desire to do that. So there's 73 remedies that have that as a symptom in varying degrees. Okay. The next one was, like I told you about the ailments from. So he has ailments from suppressed anger is the second symptom. The anger and irritability from trifles, or basically getting irritated at little things. Anxiety worse in the evening or at night. So the less than sign means worse, and the greater than sign means better. So that's anxiety better in the evening or night, or worse in the evening or night. Anxiety after midnight is another one. Sleepless after midnight. The cracked skin and feet and the heels. The cracks around the lips. The impatience. Sensitive to noise. Sensitive to flowers is the rubric we use for sensitive to perfume. Being a pessimist. Ailments from disappointment. Anxiety about the future. Fear of public speaking. Self-reproach, so blaming himself, all that self-directed anger. Food, the craving for meat, the craving for salt or salty food. Ailments from the humiliation. The fact that rubbing or massage makes his musculoskeletal pain feel better. Motion tends to make him feel. I hand wrote down at the bottom there. It didn't all fit on the page. So motion ameliorates. So motion makes it better. Exertion makes him feel better. He's better lying on the back. He tends to have a lot of remorse, pity, and brooding. He perspires on his head and forehead. He drools. Sleeps on his stomach. Photophobia, so sensitive to light. The external throat, this is where you want to look for the section of where the clothes are tight around the neck. External throat, clothing aggravates. Back pain, better laying on a hard surface. Teeth grinding and clenching. Generally worse from wet weather. Remember, that was a big one. And okay, so in the software program I'm using, I created a second, we call these clipboards, so I created a second clipboard where I pared it down and went with of those, only the really characteristic symptoms. So only the ones that were very characteristic did I include on this in this list. So you see the cursing is up at the top. You can see I pared it down. This is what I consider to be the most characteristic of the characteristic. A lot of cursing, worse from suppressed anger, irritability from trifles, the cracked heels, the cracked lips, the impatience, the oversensitive to noise, sensitive to the perfume, flowers, desiring meat, salty food, sleepless after midnight, teeth grinding, and worse from wet weather. Then I took it one more step and pared it down. So sulfur is there, causticum is not there, arsenicum album is there, nitric acid is there, lycopodium is there, nux vomica is not there, and so it goes. So it's one of those remedies that I just mentioned. And like I said, I did not expect you to get this. It's a remedy that's not so commonly prescribed, probably not as commonly prescribed as it needs to be, but it has a lot of characteristic symptoms. It's a remedy with a lot of symptoms, and it fits our patient really well. So what I was doing is that, in looking at this, calcarea carbonica tends to not be such an intense emotion. It's more of like a sluggish kind of a person. So I didn't really feel that was the best remedy, the best choice. Sepia tends to love the sun and be much better from, it just doesn't fit the overall, what we would call like the fingerprint or the genius of the remedy. So sepia, you would expect to have a lot of symptoms that we didn't have that were strong, like a 2 to 4 in the afternoon time aggravation, a craving for chocolate, much better from vigorous exercise, and craving the sun and much better from the sun, could be in the sun all day long with no sensitivity. So that sun sensitivity and temperature are two things that are so strong, are so important, that if you have something that if one person is sensitive to the sun, a remedy that could be in the sun all day long, you can't be that remedy.
Okay.
Or if it's a really chilly person and the remedy tends to be a really warm person, it goes against it too strongly. You can't prescribe that remedy. Staph aureus was a possibility. Staph aureus, people tend to suppress anger a lot and tend to put on almost wouldn't even know that they're upset. But then very rarely, once in a great while, they tend to have an explosion of anger where they throw things and yell and scream. And so he let out his emotions too often throughout the day for it to be suppressed to the degree that Staph aureus would suppress. Natrum muriaticum was a strong consideration. There were a lot of symptoms there that coincided, but it didn't have as what Natrum muriaticum tends to do when it gets upset, and we talked about relationships and things, tends to be so afraid of and insensitive to the rejection that they'll wall themselves off and keep themselves from letting other people in, being afraid to open up again in a relationship. And he didn't seem to have as much of that as a problem. Didn't have the typical 10 to 11 in the morning time aggravation.
That's true.
He liked salt, but it wasn't so strong, and he didn't have the other food cravings, which is oftentimes an aversion to fish, as well as a real strong craving for starchy food. So made it a little bit lower. Also, no history of cold sores, which is strong for Natrum muriaticum, so it didn't fit it great. Sulfur tends not to be as emotionally volatile and tends to crave sweet strongly. Causticum is really sensitive to the cold and didn't fit that great. Arsenicum is there were a lot of symptoms that it fit, but there were a lot that it really didn't. So wasn't a great choice there. Nux vomica would have fit really well had he been very sensitive to. He'd been a chilly patient that was sensitive to cold, because the hallmarks of nux vomica in a chronic case are someone who's chilly, who's irritable, who's impatient, and is sensitive to noise and all these things. The problem is if the patient's not much worse from, not overall chilly and worse from chill and worse from cold draft, it's very difficult. You almost would never prescribe nux vomica in a case like that. So that was ruled out. Nitric acid is a remedy that's similar to nux vomica in a lot of ways, the irritability but it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily such a chilly remedy. And it has, as you can see there, it has, as the cursing, it's the only remedy that has cursing so strongly. So there's only 2 remedies that have it. There's no 4s in the repertory, and there's only 2 that have it as a 3, and the other one isn't even close. So when we look at this as being the strongest symptom in the case, and the fact that it fits the overall case pretty well, that ended up becoming the remedy that I prescribed. Any questions or comments on that?